Hey everyone, welcome to an episode of the Elixir Foundation series. So in this episode right here, we're going to be continuing where we left off. So we now have collected, in one agent, a list of all the requests, and the other one, we collected the list of all the responses. So in this episode, we're going to take a look at how we can actually, check when the actual, request has completed. So basically, one naive way of doing it would be to when we send out the request, everything is fine. But when we receive the response, we check if the response received, all total response received equals the number on the amount of requests sent, because we have access to the agents in this handle info. But the problem is, as the requests are getting sent out, we might be getting a response because everything is happening asynchronously, remember, which means as the URLs are, as the requests are filling up, the responses are also filling up. And there's a high chance that, midway through they're equal. So, like for example, if, going through 3 requests and then now 3 responses come back, and then, when the check runs, it's equal, and then it exits, and then it considers that the page is complete. Well, actually it's not. So we need some kind of a more sophisticated way to check the response has been received and all the requests have been made. So we need something of like a status checker. So what we are going to do is going to create a new GenServer status.ex. So def module, Botiful dot render dot status. Yeah, so the name is pretty fitting. Use GenServer, and then basically what we're going to do is we're going to do def start link, and then here we're going to pass in the agents and the owner. So basically what this is going to do is it's going to launch the GenServer. So GenServer.startLink module, passing in the agents and the owner. And basically, this is the public API. And then we have our callbacks, def init, and then here we're going to have agents and then owner, and then do. And here we're going to have OK, and we're going to pass it kind of like the requests, and then agents.requests, and then responses, agents.responses, and then we have owner. So once the GenServer starts, maybe like after a few milliseconds, like a 500 milliseconds, we want to run a check to see if the request on the left equals the responses. So we can implement something like def p check. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to schedule a check, a call for a self check. So schedule check. So once it starts, we're going to schedule a check. And basically what this is going to do is it's going to send a message to itself to run a certain command. And this command is going to be run a certain function. And this whole function is going to basically be, let's remove all that distracting stuff. It's going to check if the request on the left match with the request on the right. So what I'm going to do is process.send after self. So essentially, we're going to run this check. So this is basically the way we send the request back to ourselves. And so what this means is we need to do a def handle info check state do. And here, we can now actually count the requests. So how are we going to do that? We're going to call the agent get. So let's do count requests. Let's actually call it requests. Count equals agent.get state.request. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do an enum. So fn state enum.count state. So we're going to get, on the first one, we're going to get a enum count state. Yeah, so we're going to count the amount of requests, and then basically we need to count the responses. Count agent.get state.responses fn state enum.count state end. So this is pretty ugly, I have to say. You know, like it's you know, we can definitely clean this up. Like we can, you know, we can try and do something like this, put it on the next line or whatever. But you know, this is, you know, we can definitely do better than this for sure. So let's go ahead and refactor this. So def p count calls, we're going to pass it the PID. And then basically in here, we're going to do agent. Actually, we can do something like this. Agent dot get PID. And then we're going to do enum dot count. So this is a lot cleaner than what we have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do count calls, and we're going to pass in the state.request. Yeah, that looks pretty respectable, I would say. And the same thing here, count calls, state.responses. All right, so now when it checks the state, we also need to count invalid responses. So invalid responses are basically 500 responses. So anything that is greater than or equal to 500. So what we want to do is we want to count invalid responses. So we're going to do invalid responses equals, and we're going to do def p count invalid responses, and then we have responses do. All right, so agent.get responses, and then we're going to do fn calls. So we can just do state or calls. And then in here, we're going to do calls, and then we're going to filter out. So we're going to do enum.filter, and then we have fn, and then we have status. So this is the responses. So it's a list of responses, like 200, 300, whatever. And then that's what we're going to use. So if status is greater than or equal to 500 end. And then we're going to count. So enum.count. So basically this will give us a number of invalid responses that happened, right? So here we're going to do count invalid responses, and we're going to pass it state.responses. So that's all we need to really do in terms of all the numbers we're going to use in terms of checking if something is, if the page has been completely rendered. So I'm going to do what I'm going to use, what's called a cond. So cond do, and then basically here we're going to do a request count equals responses count and invalid responses equals 0. So let's let's take a look at what a cond is. A cond will basically allow you to put in whatever condition you want, and if it returns true, it will basically do what you would need it to do. So in this case, if this returns true, what we actually need to do is do a process.send. And now we're going to send a response back to our owner. So state.owner. And then basically we are going to say that it's complete and valid. And then we're going to do a no suspend. So I'll explain no suspend a little bit later. But for now, we're going to send it a message, and we're going to say that if this is true, if this condition is true, the request count and the responses count are equal, they're the same, and there are no invalid responses, everything is checks out, we're gonna send the owner. So in this case, the owner is the actual engine. So the engine is the one who is gonna start the status checker. It's going to send itself as its own PID as owner, and then that's what we're using here in order to send a message back and say, hey, it's like two people communicating, right? It's like you know someone, they have your email address, and you can say to someone, hey, can you do this for me and just check if something is happening? And if it does happen and everything goes according to plan, can you send me this message? And basically, I will then look at that message and say, oh, okay, everything was good, double check. Now I'm going to do something else with that information. It's literally like that. So, I mean, that's the easiest way I can explain it to you. And that's exactly what we're doing here. There's also another case that might happen, which is that, invalid response is greater than 1, which means in that case, we need to make sure that, if the whole rendering process of getting the network call is done. It might be done, and, we might have to just not cache that page because we consider it an error and we can't do anything productive with it. But hey, that's the case. So we're gonna do requests counts equals responses counts. Basically, we need to be able to handle when errors happen. So process.send state.owner, and then here we're gonna say completed. So this has to be completed and valid. So this is just completed. So and then no suspend. Okay, so after we send the message, we want to return something here. Stop normal state. What this is going to do is, if everything is completed, we can shut down the status checker because at that point, everything's done. We don't need to continue to run this process in memory. We don't need it. So we're going to run stop, and if we return this here, that will basically terminate this process, which is, it's clean, right? We want to clean that up. And then here we're going to do stop normal state. All right, so there's another case, true, which is, if neither of this is true, if, we can't get a complete status or complete and valid, then we need to basically reschedule the status checker because at some point, those two are going to be equal. Like the worst case scenario, they'll be equal, and we'll have an invalid response. Best case scenario, they'll be equal, and then we will not have any invalid response. So we're handling the different cases. This is the best case scenario. This means that our page rendering is done and it's valid and we can serve it. And in this case, then we might need to do a re-render. I don't know. We need to handle it somehow. And here is if it's not done. If not done means that we need to come back and check later. It's like, if I go and check somewhere and I say, hey, is it done? Like if I send my computer in for a fix, and I haven't heard in a while, I'll be like, hey, are you done? So that's kind of like what we're doing here. So what we have to do here is we're gonna schedule a check. So schedule check. And then basically here we're gonna do a no reply state, and that's it. So that's pretty much it in terms of, I think I put one too many S in there. So it's process.send after. Okay, so everything is checking out. Everything seems to be fine. I am okay, all true. So we'll talk about all this, properties and all that stuff a little bit later. So that's pretty much the implementation for the status checker. This is not it. This is, not foolproof yet. Like this, there is some flaws in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause this video over here, and then in the next video I'm going to run this server, and then we're going to actually see what happens. And we're just going to log stuff out in the terminal just to show that it's actually running or whatever. And then basically, we'll see how we go on and check that actually everything is, correctly working and all that stuff. So that's coming up in the next episode. This episode is a members exclusive. So if you're a member, thank you for watching. and thank you for becoming a member. We appreciate your support. And also ask any questions you have in our forum. We have a forum on our site. So if you head over to codemy.net and go to discuss, we have a discussion forum where you can ask any kinds of questions, or you can give us feedback, or you can request a certain piece of content. You can vote if there's something you like here, you can vote it up. So yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a great way to share knowledge and build a community around the content. So like if there's something specific you want to ask, feel free to ask it here in our forum. And so yeah, with that, I want to wrap up this episode. I will see you guys and girls in the next one.